She returned home early from her business trip in Toronto, only to find her billionaire husband holding her best friend, who was visibly pregnant. But what looked like betrayal was only the beginning of a secret that would shatter everything she believed. Before I begin the story, I'd like to say a quick prayer for you, my dear family. May your days be filled with peace, your heart with joy, and your steps guided by light. Amen. If you're happy to be here, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story. The rain fell over Toronto like a curtain of silver threads, blurring the city lights into a watercolor haze. Streetcars hummed across wet rails, and the sky hung low with clouds that promised another restless night. Inside Pearson Airport, Isabella Cole wheeled her small suitcase across the marble floor, her heels clicking in soft, deliberate rhythm. Her flight from Montreal had landed nearly 2 hours earlier than anyone expected, especially her husband. She hadn't told Ethan Ward she was coming home tonight. For weeks, their conversations had been short, formal, careful, as though both were afraid to touch the cracks forming between them. She thought maybe a surprise visit would remind them of what they used to be. The laughter, the quiet dinners, the warmth that once filled the penthouse overlooking Lake Ontario. Her colleagues had insisted she stay for the closing dinner after the business conference. "Celebrate, Bella. You nailed that pitch," her project partner had said, glasses raised. But Isabella had smiled politely, slipped away early, and booked the last flight home. She wanted to see him. No, she needed to. The black sedan she hailed glided through downtown Toronto's rain-slick streets, passing storefronts that shimmered in the reflections of passing cars. The city had always felt alive to her, a place that pulsed with ambition and risk. It was where she and Ethan had built everything together. She remembered their first apartment, a narrow studio with leaky pipes and a view of a brick wall. They'd lived on ramen and shared dreams, promising that one day they'd have a window that overlooked the skyline. They got that window. They got everything. But somewhere between board meetings and private jets, love had become an afterthought. Her phone buzzed beside her in the car seat. A message from her best friend, Vanessa. "Feeling sick again tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Isabella smiled faintly. Vanessa had been complaining of morning sickness for weeks now. It was strange. Her due date was months away, but the symptoms were getting worse instead of better. Isabella had promised to drop by after her trip with some herbal tea and baby books. She typed a quick reply. "Of course. Home early tonight. We'll call tomorrow." The car slowed in front of the glass towers of Ward Industries residences, Ethan's latest development project, and their home on the 24th floor. The driver offered to help with their bags, but she waved him off. The lobby smelled faintly of sandalwood and polished marble. Ethan's choice, naturally. Everything about this building bore his mark. The precision, the elegance, the quiet power. As the elevator doors closed around her, Isabella caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her makeup was smudged from travel, her hair slightly disheveled, yet there was a softness in her eyes she hadn't seen in months. Hope. She imagined him opening the door, surprise lighting up his face, arms wrapping around her. Maybe tonight they would talk. Maybe tonight they'd begin again. The elevator chimed. She stepped out into the quiet hallway, carpet muffling her footsteps. Their door, Unit 2401, was slightly ajar. She frowned. Ethan never left it unlocked. He was meticulous about security, about everything. Her heart gave a small, uncertain beat. Maybe he had just stepped out to the terrace. Maybe he'd gone to get wine. The faint sound of music reached her ears, a soft, low jazz melody drifting from the living room. Her lips curved. Ethan loved jazz on rainy nights. She pushed the door open gently and stepped inside. Warm light glowed from the floor lamps. A bottle of wine sat half empty on the marble counter. 2 glasses. Isabella's smile faltered. A woman's laughter floated down the hallway, light and intimate. The kind of laughter that only comes from comfort, not surprise. Her body tensed, the sound freezing her mid-step. It couldn't be. She followed the sound, each step heavy, each breath thinner than the last. The laughter came again from their bedroom. Her bedroom. The door was slightly open. Through the crack, she saw silhouettes moving. The faint outline of a man's bare shoulders, the whisper of long dark hair. Her mind refused to understand. For one long, impossible second, she thought she might be hallucinating. Maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on her. Maybe this wasn't real. But then she heard his voice. Ethan's. Low. Familiar. Murmured words she had heard countless nights before. The world tilted. Her hand flew to her mouth, but no sound came out. She watched motionless as Vanessa's voice, Vanessa's laugh, mingled with his. Her best friend, her husband, in her bed. A sudden gust of wind from the balcony door rustled the curtains, scattering the music into silence. Isabella backed away, her knees weak, heart hammering so loud she could hear nothing else. She wanted to scream, to throw the door open, to demand an explanation. But the sight before her had already spoken every word she could never unhear. She stumbled backward into the hallway, knocking against the side table. A photo frame crashed to the floor. Their wedding picture, glass shattering across the marble tiles. The sound startled him. She heard Ethan curse softly, heard the rustle of sheets. Isabella turned and fled. The elevator doors were closing as Ethan's voice echoed down the hall. Bella? Bella, wait. But she was already pressing the button. Tears spilling down her cheeks, her chest tight with suffocating disbelief. The ride down felt endless. Her reflection blurred through tears. She looked like a ghost of herself. By the time she reached the lobby, her hands were shaking so violently that she could barely hold her phone. The concierge called after her, but she pushed through the revolving doors into the storm. Outside, the rain hit her face like tiny shards of glass. The city noise rose around her, car horns thundered distant sirens. But all she could hear was Vanessa's laughter. She walked until her legs gave out. A black sedan pulled over beside her. The driver rolled down the window, asking if she needed help. She nodded mutely and gave the name of a hotel. Inside the car, she stared out the window as the skyline blurred past, her wedding ring cold against her finger. In the quiet hum of the city night, she whispered to no one, Why her? The hotel lobby was warm, golden, almost indifferent to her devastation. She checked in under her maiden name, Isabella Cole, not Isabella Ward, and took the elevator up to the 16th floor. When she reached her suite, she dropped her luggage, peeled off her wet coat, and sank to the carpet. The city lights flickered through the rain-streaked window like distant constellations. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass. Her chest hurt in ways she didn't know were possible. In her mind, fragments of memory surfaced. Ethan's laughter when they signed the contract for their first apartment. His late-night calls from the office. The way he used to kiss her wrist before every meeting for luck. Had all of it been a lie? The thought made her sick. She stumbled to the bathroom and turned on the faucet, splashing cold water over her face. Her reflection looked older, almost unfamiliar. Eyes red, lipstick smudged, the edges of her composure stripped away. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. Bella, please pick up. It's not what you think. Ethan, let me explain. She threw the phone onto the bed and wrapped her arms around herself. The sound of rain filled the silence, relentless and uncaring. Hours passed. She sat by the window, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the skyline that once symbolized everything they'd built together. Now, it felt like a monument to betrayal. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, exhaustion pulled her under. When she woke, sunlight was pushing through the curtains, weak and pale. Her phone lay beside her, screen filled with missed calls. Ethan, Vanessa, even her assistant. She scrolled through them numbly until one message caught her eye. Vanessa's voice message. Her finger hovered over it before pressing play. Bella, please, just let me explain. It's not how it looks. I swear. Please don't hate me. I made a mistake. Her voice cracked halfway through, dissolving into sobs. Isabella stared at the screen, disbelief giving way to something colder, heavier. Rage. She deleted the message without finishing it. Then she opened her laptop, typed a single line to her mentor in New York. Is that position you mentioned still open? Within minutes, the reply came. Yes, if you can be here by next week. She exhaled long and trembling. The decision formed itself like instinct, quiet, absolute. She would leave Toronto, leave the betrayal, the lies, the ghosts of a life that no longer existed. As she packed her suitcase, she caught a glimpse of her reflection once more. For a moment, she didn't see a broken woman. She saw a survivor being reborn. But when she reached for her wedding ring, she froze. The gold band gleamed faintly in the morning light, mocking her. She slipped it off and set it on the nightstand. The sound it made against the glass surface was small final. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, Isabella Cole, no longer Isabella Ward, closed her suitcase and walked out the door, her heart still in pieces, but her step steady. Toronto looked different in the daylight. The city that once sparkled with opportunity now felt cold, metallic, and unwelcoming. The streets buzzed with life, but to Isabella it was only noise. Honking cars, hurried footsteps, fragments of laughter that reminded her too much of what she'd lost. She sat in the back of a cab, her sunglasses hiding swollen eyes, her suitcase beside her. The hotel had arranged a driver to take her to the airport, but she wasn't flying yet. She'd asked for a detour, to pick up a few documents from her office at Ward Industries before disappearing for good. Her heart tightened at the thought of walking back into that building, the one she'd helped Ethan design, plan, and decorate. She'd been part of every brick of that empire, from the first investor meeting to the company's first $1 million deal. And now, it all felt like a mausoleum of broken promises. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. You okay, ma'am? She nodded quickly, forcing a polite smile. Just tired. Long week. The words came out flat, but it didn't matter. She didn't owe anyone the truth anymore. When the cab pulled up in front of Ward Tower, a sleek glass monolith reaching for the clouds, Isabella hesitated. The last time she'd been here, Ethan had kissed her forehead before a meeting, whispering, "We make a good team, Mrs. Ward." Now the mere sound of his name made her stomach turn. She squared her shoulders and stepped out into the morning air. Her heels clicked across the polished lobby floor, echoing softly. The receptionist, a young woman named Lila, looked up in surprise. "Mrs. Ward, you're back early," Mr. Ward said. "I'm just here to collect some personal items," Isabella interrupted gently. Her voice was calm, controlled. "Please don't announce me." Lila hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, ma'am." Isabella walked toward the private elevator that led to her executive suite on the 18th floor. Each step felt like walking deeper into a memory she wished she could erase. The elevator doors slid shut, trapping her in silence and reflections. Her own face looked back at her, composed on the surface, shattered beneath. When the doors opened, the familiar scent of jasmine air freshener greeted her. Her office was exactly as she'd left it, neat, professional, a few framed photos on a shelf. One caught her eye, a photo of her and Ethan cutting a ribbon at the company's grand opening. She was laughing in the picture, genuinely happy. Without thinking, she turned the photo face down. Then she began to gather her things. Her design notebook, a few client folders, the small crystal paperweight Ethan had given her during their first year of marriage. Her fingers trembled slightly as she wrapped it in tissue and slipped it into her purse. Just as she zipped the bag, The door opened behind her. Bella. The sound of his voice froze her mid-motion. She didn't turn, didn't move. She only gripped the edge of her desk tighter. Ethan stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. He looked different, disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, his suit thrown together in haste. "I've been calling you all night," he said quietly. "You can't just disappear like that." Her jaw clenched. "Can I?" He took a step closer. "Please, just listen. What you saw, it wasn't what it looked like." That old, useless phrase. She almost laughed. Isabella turned finally, eyes cold and steady. "Don't insult my intelligence, Ethan. I saw you. I heard you. Both of you." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through his composure. "It was a mistake, Bella. I swear. I didn't mean for it to happen. Vanessa, she's been going through a lot, and I was trying to be there for her. By sleeping with her?" Her voice cracked like thunder, sharp and trembling. "You were trying to be there for her?" He flinched. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, suffocating. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Do you love her?" Ethan's eyes darted away. "It's not like that. That's not an answer." He sighed, shoulders sagging. "No, I don't love her. It just happened. I was stupid. I thought you were pulling away, that you didn't need me anymore. I made the worst mistake of my life." She stared at him, disbelieving. "So you decided to fix our distance by betraying me with my best friend? Bella?" "No," she raised a hand. "You don't get to say my name like that. Not after what you've done." He took another step toward her. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll end things with her right now. I'll make it right. Just don't leave." Isabella looked at him for a long, quiet second. She saw the man she'd once loved, the man who'd built empires beside her, who'd held her hand through nights of failure and triumph. But now, all she could see was the fracture line between who he'd been and who he'd become. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice trembling but sure, "you already did." She brushed past him, her perfume lingering in the air, the scent of finality. As she stepped into the elevator, Ethan's voice cracked behind her. "Bella, please, don't go." The doors closed, cutting him off. For a brief second, she felt her heart waver, just a flicker. But then the elevator began to descend, and the resolve inside her solidified like steel. That night, Isabella booked a one-way flight to New York City. She didn't tell anyone. Not her coworkers, not Vanessa, not even her parents. She needed distance, space to breathe, to think, to feel something other than pain. Her new job offer was waiting. Creative director at Westbridge Design Group, one of the top firms in Manhattan. It had been her dream position years ago, but she turned it down to support Ethan's company. Now, fate was offering her a second chance. As she packed the last of her clothes, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Vanessa. "Please, Bella, can we meet? I'm begging you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't know what to do." Her hands trembled as she read it. For a moment, a part of her wanted to scream at her, to unleash all the rage buried inside. But instead, she deleted the message and turned off her phone. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about her. She stood by the window, looking out at the Toronto skyline one last time. The lights flickered across the horizon like broken promises. And for the first time in years, Isabella whispered to herself, "It's my turn to start over." When the plane took off the next morning, she didn't look back. As the city shrank beneath her, Isabella closed her eyes and let the sound of the engines drown out the echo of Ethan's voice in her mind. But even as the clouds swallowed Toronto from view, one truth lingered. No matter how high she flew, some part of her heart was still tethered to the man she'd once believed in. The first thing Isabella noticed about New York was the noise. It was relentless, the kind of chaos that didn't ask for permission. Honking taxis, street vendors shouting over one another, the distant hum of subway trains beneath her feet. It should have been overwhelming, but to Isabella, it sounded like freedom. Freedom had a sound, and it was loud. Her taxi crawled up through Manhattan's midday traffic, sunlight flashing against the skyscrapers. The driver was humming to an old Sinatra tune, oblivious to the world rushing past. Isabella sat quietly, sunglasses on, fingers tracing the edge of her boarding pass like she was holding the last piece of her old life. By the time they reached her new apartment in Midtown, she felt the exhaustion seep into her bones. The space was small, nothing like the Toronto penthouse she'd shared with Ethan, but it was hers, unshared, uncontaminated, untouched by betrayal. She dropped her suitcase in the middle of the hardwood floor, stood in silence for a few seconds, and then exhaled. It was strange how silence could feel healing. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A notification. New email, Ethan Ward. She froze. For a second, the air thickened. She opened the message anyway. Subject, please. Just once. Isabella, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I can't accept that this is how our story ends. I messed up. I know that. You didn't deserve it. You never did. I'll wait for you, however long it takes. I just need you to know that I'm not giving up on us. Ethan. She stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then she hit archive. Not today, she whispered. The next morning, the city woke her with sunlight cutting through the blinds. She brewed coffee in the tiny kitchen, watching the steam curl up like soft white smoke. Her heart was still heavy, but something inside her had shifted. She was beginning to breathe again. Her first day at Westbridge Design Group was a blur of introductions, glossy portfolios, and polite smiles. The office occupied the 27th floor of a high-rise in Soho. Minimalist interiors, white walls, and enormous windows that made the skyline look like an art piece. Her new boss, Claudia Moreno, was a force, sharp-eyed, elegant, mid-40s, with a calm authority that commanded every room she entered. Welcome aboard, Isabella, she said, shaking her hand firmly. I've heard a lot about your work with Ward Industries. You built quite a name for yourself. Isabella smiled faintly. Thank you. I'm looking forward to building something new. Claudia tilted her head, intrigued by the choice of words. Good. We like people who know how to rebuild. This industry eats the weak alive. The words hit Isabella deeper than she expected. That day, she threw herself into work. Long hours, sketching concepts for a luxury residential project, meeting clients, brainstorming color palettes. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of pride that wasn't tied to Ethan's shadow. That night, she rewarded herself with a quiet dinner at a small Italian restaurant around the corner. The waiter seated her by the window, and she spent the meal sketching ideas on a napkin while the city buzzed outside. Across the street, a couple was laughing. Young, carefree, holding hands in the rain. For a moment, her chest tightened. She wondered if Ethan was thinking about her, or if Vanessa had replaced the emptiness she left behind. She shook the thought away. But healing, she was learning, wasn't linear. Weeks turned into months. New York began to weave itself into her bloodstream. She fell in love with its contradictions, its energy, its loneliness, its beauty. She spent her mornings running through Central Park, her afternoons buried in blueprints, and her nights staring out her apartment window at the glittering skyline. Still, sometimes she'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart racing, Ethan's name on her lips. Sometimes she'd dream of the life they almost had, children, a house by the lake, laughter echoing through hallways instead of silence. But every morning, she reminded herself, he made his choice. And so did I. One evening, as she packed up her desk after a long meeting, Claudia approached. There's a gala next weekend, she said. Big clients, lots of press. You should come. It'll be good for networking. And your designs deserve the attention. Isabella hesitated. A gala? Claudia smiled knowingly. You'll need a dress. The night of the gala. The ballroom at the plaza was a glittering ocean of diamonds, champagne, and ambition. Cameras flashed. Waiters glided between guests carrying trays of crystal glasses, and the orchestra filled the air with soft music. Isabella stepped in, draped in a midnight blue gown that hugged her figure like poetry. Heads turned. Conversations paused. She was a kind of beauty that carried quiet strength, not the loud glamour of someone trying to be seen, but the grace of someone who had survived fire and come out gold. Claudia introduced her to investors, clients, and fellow designers. Compliments flowed easily, and for the first time, Isabella felt like she belonged here, like this city was beginning to make space for her. Then, just as she turned to reach for a glass of champagne, her breath caught. Across the room, by the grand staircase, stood a man she thought she'd never see again. Ethan. He looked older, or maybe it was just the guilt etched into the corners of his eyes. He was talking to a group of executives, but his gaze found her instantly, like gravity had pulled his eyes to her. The glass nearly slipped from her hand. Her heart thudded in her chest, old wounds reopening with brutal precision. He began to move toward her. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to walk away before the storm she'd barely survived began again. But her feet refused to move. He stopped a few steps away, voice low, careful. "You look breathtaking." She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "You shouldn't be here." "I came for a client meeting," he said softly. "I didn't know you'd be here." She raised an eyebrow. "And yet you came straight to me." He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been trying to talk to you for months. You never answered my calls." I had nothing left to say. Ethan's expression flickered with pain. "Bella, please. I know you hate me, but—" "I don't hate you," she interrupted. Her voice was calm, clear. "I just don't trust you." He swallowed hard. "I deserve that. But I can't stop thinking about you. About us." She forced a laugh, soft, sad. "Us? There's no us, Ethan. You burned that bridge the night I came home early." "Vanessa left," he said suddenly. She moved out. The pregnancy, it wasn't. He hesitated, lowering his voice. "She lost the baby." The air seemed to shift, heavy with silence. Isabella blinked, unsure how to feel. "I didn't come here to guilt you," he added quickly. "I just thought you should know." She nodded faintly, emotions tangled beyond words. Before she could respond, Claudia called from across the room. "Isabella, they're ready for your presentation." Isabella turned back to Ethan. "I have to go." "Please," he whispered, desperation seeping into his voice. "Just one dinner. No expectations. I just need to see you, really see you, without the noise." She hesitated. Against her better judgment, something inside her stirred. Curiosity, closure, maybe even compassion. She met his eyes. "One dinner. That's all." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "That's all I need." As she walked away toward Claudia and the flashing lights, Ethan watched her. The woman he had betrayed, the woman he was still in love with, the woman who had learned to shine without him. And for the first time since that night in Toronto, he realized something terrifying. He might have built an empire, but she was the one thing he could never rebuild. The city lights shimmered against the glass as Isabella sat across from Ethan in a quiet corner of La Verita, a high-end Italian restaurant tucked away in downtown Manhattan. The table between them glowed under the soft golden light of a single candle. It should have felt romantic, but it didn't. It felt haunted. She stirred her wine, watching the crimson liquid swirl like old memories she couldn't quite swallow. Ethan sat still, hands folded, eyes searching her face like he was trying to memorize her all over again. "You haven't changed," he said finally, voice low and careful. Isabella's lips twitched into something resembling a smile. "That's not true. Everything about me has changed." He sighed, nodding slowly. "Yeah, I can see that." The silence that followed was thick, filled with all the things they didn't dare say. The waiter came, poured wine. and disappeared like a ghost. I didn't think you'd actually come, Ethan admitted. I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't. Curiosity, she said simply. I wanted to see what kind of man you've become since you broke the woman who loved you. The words were calm, but they cut like glass. Ethan flinched. I deserve that, he said quietly. But I need you to understand something, Isabella. That night, it wasn't what you think. She raised an eyebrow. You mean the part where I walked in and saw my husband with my pregnant best friend? Which part of that was misunderstood? His jaw tightened. I didn't know she was pregnant then. I swear to you, Bella, it was a mistake. A stupid, drunken mistake that happened once. Isabella's laugh was sharp, hollow. That's what they all say. Once. Like that makes betrayal easier to digest. Ethan leaned forward, desperation flickering behind his eyes. I loved you. I still love you. I never stopped. Her chest tightened, but she didn't let it show. Love isn't supposed to destroy someone, Ethan. His voice broke. I destroyed myself too. For a moment, the air between them softened. The pain in his voice wasn't performative. It was real, cracked, and raw. She could see the sleepless nights etched beneath his eyes, the guilt that shadowed every word. But guilt wasn't enough. Why Vanessa? She asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Of all people, why her? Ethan's gaze dropped to the tablecloth. His fingers fidgeted with the edge of his glass. She was there. She knew everything about us. Every fight, every silence. She made me feel understood at a time when we were falling apart. I was weak, angry, drunk. I don't even remember. Don't, Isabella interrupted. Don't cheapen it with excuses. You remember enough. Silence. Only the faint sound of violins from the restaurant's corner filled the space between them. Ethan finally looked up, eyes glistening. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. But I want you to know I never stopped wishing it had been different. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak. Wishing doesn't undo betrayal. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I know. For a long time, neither spoke. They sat there, two people bound by a history too tangled to unravel and too painful to ignore. Finally, Isabella stood. I should go. Ethan rose too. Bella, please. She looked at him, her expression soft but firm. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. She turned to leave, but before she could step away, he said something that froze her mid-step. Vanessa's missing. She stopped cold. Slowly, she turned back to face him. What? Ethan's face was pale, drawn. She disappeared 3 days ago. She hasn't shown up for work. Her phone's off. Her apartment's empty. The police came by yesterday. For a moment, Isabella thought he was lying, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable, the kind that only comes from truth. And you're telling me this why? She asked cautiously. Because he hesitated. Because she told people she was coming to see you. The word struck like a thunderclap. Me, Isabella's heart pounded. That's impossible. I haven't spoken to her since. I know, Ethan interrupted. But her neighbor said she mentioned your name the night she disappeared. Isabella's hands trembled as she tried to process his words. Vanessa had been her best friend for years, a sister in everything but blood, until that night in Toronto shattered everything. The idea of her showing up again after months of silence sent shivers crawling up her spine. She wouldn't, Isabella murmured. She wouldn't come here. Ethan rubbed his temples. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she was looking for closure. I don't know. But if she reached out, I thought you should know. She sat back down slowly, her mind spinning. The candle flickered, shadows dancing across their faces. So what now? She asked. The police are investigating, Ethan said. They asked about her last contacts. If they call you, just tell them the truth. Of course, she said, still stunned. When the waiter returned with the check, neither of them touched it. The meal lay forgotten, wine glasses half full. As they stepped outside, the night air bit cold against her skin. Manhattan's noise roared around them. Car horns, laughter, the rush of distant sirens. "Bella," Ethan said softly as she turned to leave. "Whatever happens next, be careful." She frowned. "Why would you say that?" He hesitated. "Because I don't know what Vanessa was capable of anymore. And if she was looking for you." He trailed off, eyes dark with unease. "Ethan," Isabella said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what aren't you telling me?" He looked at her, and for a heartbeat, she saw something flicker behind his expression. Fear, regret, secrets buried too long. "Nothing," he lied. "Just promise me you'll keep your door locked." And with that, he walked away, disappearing into the New York night, leaving Isabella standing on the sidewalk, heart pounding, the city lights blurring around her like a fever dream. She didn't know it yet, but the dinner that was meant for closure had just opened a door to a new nightmare. Sleep became a stranger that week. Every time Isabella closed her eyes, she saw Vanessa, her smile, her betrayal, her tear-streaked face. The night she'd begged for forgiveness and Isabella had turned away. But now, that same face haunted her in ways she couldn't explain. She told herself it was just guilt, or unease stirred by Ethan's warning. But deep down, she knew better. The air around her had changed, charged with something invisible yet undeniably real. It began subtly. The first time, it was a knock at her door just past midnight. When she opened it, no one was there. Only the quiet hum of city traffic below and a faint scent of lavender. The same perfume Vanessa used to wear. The second time, she noticed her apartment door slightly ajar when she came home from work. She could have sworn she'd locked it. Nothing was missing but her favorite framed photograph, one of her and Vanessa on their first trip to Italy, had been moved, tilted just slightly to the left, a small, deliberate touch. By the third incident, an envelope slid under her door with no name, no return address. Her hands were trembling. She ripped it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was her, taken from across the street, standing in her office window. The timestamp read Tuesday, 8:03 p.m. Her stomach twisted into knots. That was the night she'd stayed late finishing a presentation. The same night she'd felt like someone was watching her. The next morning, she showed the picture to Claudia, her boss. Claudia's usual calm cracked for the first time. "Isabella, this is serious," she said, voice low. "You need to call the police." "I did," Isabella said. "They told me they'd look into it. But without a threat, there's nothing they can do." Claudia frowned, eyes narrowing. "What about your husband? Could he?" "No," Isabella cut in quickly. "Ethan would never." She stopped herself, then exhaled. "At least not like this." Claudia didn't push, but her expression said what she wouldn't. "You can't really be sure of that, can you?" That night, Isabella double-locked her door and left every light on. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, even the faint whoosh of cars outside. Everything felt too loud, too sharp. At 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have left so soon." She sat up in bed, heart hammering. "Who was this?" She typed. No response. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She set the phone down and pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. When she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, she dreamed of Vanessa standing at the foot of her bed, her face pale, her eyes hollow, whispering, "You took everything from me, Bella." She woke up screaming. By morning, she was done pretending she could handle it alone. She called Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. "Bella?" His voice was groggy, worried. "It's 7 a.m. Are you okay?" "No," she said, and her voice broke. "I think someone's watching me." There was silence, then the rustle of movement. "I'm coming over." "Ethan, no. I'm already on my way." 20 minutes later, he was standing at her door, hair disheveled, concern etched into every line of his face. "Show me," he said simply. She handed him the photo and the text message. He studied them quietly, jaw tightening. This isn't a coincidence, he muttered. Someone's trying to scare you. She crossed her arms. You think it's Vanessa, don't you? He hesitated. I don't know what to think. But if she's alive, then she's angry, Isabella said softly. And she has every reason to be. Ethan met her gaze, eyes dark. No, Bella, we have reasons to be careful. He set the photo down on her coffee table and looked around the apartment, as if expecting shadows to move. You can't stay here alone. I'm not going anywhere, she said. I wasn't asking, he replied. Pack a bag. You're coming with me. She stared at him, torn between resentment and relief. You don't get to order me around anymore. I'm not your husband, he said quietly, but I'm still someone who cares about whether you wake up tomorrow. That disarmed her, the sincerity in his voice, the protective tone she used to love. Against her better judgment, she nodded. Fine, she whispered. Just for tonight. Ethan's penthouse was exactly as she remembered, sleek, expensive, too perfect. But it also felt emptier. The photos of him and Vanessa that once lined the walls were gone. Even the air smelled different, clean, untainted. Guest rooms down the hall, he said, placing her bag on the bed. Thank you. He hesitated in the doorway. Do you want me to stay? Just until you fall asleep? She wanted to say no, but fear was still crawling beneath her skin. Maybe just in the living room, she said. He nodded. Whatever you need. Later that night, she lay awake, listening to the faint sound of Ethan pacing in the next room. She could picture him, hand in his hair, restless, thinking. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, the pain, she felt something shift inside her. Maybe it was the safety of not being alone. Maybe it was the ghost of a love they once shared. She didn't know, but she slept. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the floor. She found Ethan asleep on the couch, still in his clothes, one arm draped over his face. Something about the sight made her chest tighten. She reached for her phone. 3 missed calls from a private number. No voicemails. And then another text. Did he tell you the truth yet? Her stomach dropped. Who is this? She typed quickly. 3 dots appeared. Then, ask him about the night I disappeared. She looked up slowly. Ethan was awake now, watching her. His expression changed as he saw the color drain from her face. What is it? He asked, voice low. She held up the phone. Someone just sent this. He took the phone, read the message, and went still. Ethan, she said carefully. What happened that night? He didn't answer. Ethan. He finally looked at her, his face pale as ash. I told you she disappeared, he said quietly. What I didn't tell you is, I was the last person to see her alive. Ethan's words hung in the air like a curse. I was the last person to see her alive. For a moment, Isabella couldn't speak. She just stared at him. The man she loved, the man who'd broken her, and now maybe the man who knew more than he was saying. Explain, she said finally, her voice sharp but trembling. Ethan sank onto the edge of the couch, rubbing his temples. It was the night before she disappeared. She showed up here, drunk, angry, desperate. She said she was going to the police, that she wanted to destroy me, destroy us. Us. Isabella's brows furrowed. There was no us by then, Ethan. You made sure of that. I know, he said hoarsely. But she didn't see it that way. She said I ruined her life, that she lost everything because of me. She was pregnant, and she blamed me for not supporting her when she decided to keep it. Isabella's pulse quickened. So what happened that night? He hesitated. She threatened me, said she was going to leak photos, messages, even private details from our marriage. She wanted money, but it wasn't just about that. She wanted revenge. Did you give it to her? No, he looked up at her, eyes dark. I told her I'd call my lawyer, that we'd figure something out in the morning. She laughed, said there wouldn't be a morning for me. And then, Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. She left. He swallowed hard. That was the last time I saw her. Silence. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Isabella crossed her arms, trying to steady her breathing. And you didn't tell the police this because they already suspected me, he said bitterly. And because deep down I thought maybe she was alive. Maybe she ran away to start over. God knows she had reason to. Isabella paced the room, her thoughts spinning. Ethan, do you hear yourself? You were the last person to see her. You argued. She vanished. And now I'm getting messages implying there's more to the story. He looked up sharply. You think I hurt her? I think you're not telling me everything. Ethan stood suddenly, voice rising. I didn't touch her, Bella. I was angry, but I would never. He stopped mid-sentence, his chest heaving. Then more quietly, you have to believe me. She met his gaze. You lied before. His expression cracked, just for a moment. I know, he whispered. And I've been paying for it ever since. Isabella turned away, walking to the window. Below them, the city glimmered, indifferent and cold. If you didn't hurt her, then who did? Ethan exhaled shakily. That's the question that's been killing me for months. That night, neither of them could sleep. Ethan sat in the living room nursing a drink, while Isabella stared out at the skyline from the guest room, her mind running in circles. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed again. One message. Same unknown number. He's lying to you. Her stomach dropped. She typed quickly. Who is this? Check the email I sent you. Heart racing, she opened her laptop. A new email sat at the top of her inbox. No subject line, just an attachment, a short video file named truth.mp4. Her hand shook as she clicked it. Grainy footage filled the screen. A timestamp in the corner. The night Vanessa disappeared. The camera showed a hallway, dimly lit. Security footage from a parking garage. A woman, Vanessa, stumbling, crying. Then a man following her. Tall, broad-shouldered, familiar. Ethan. He caught her arm. She struggled. He said something inaudible, and she slapped him. Then he shoved her. Vanessa hit the ground hard. The footage ended there. Black screen. Isabella froze, every muscle locking in place. Her heart hammered painfully in her chest. Ethan, she screamed. He came running, disoriented. What happened? She pointed at the laptop, shaking. Explain this. He stared at the screen. The color drained from his face. Bella, that's not what it looks like. Don't, she snapped, tears brimming in her eyes. I watched you push her. She was drunk, he shouted. She attacked me. I was trying to stop her from driving. And she ended up missing. Isabella's voice broke. How do I believe you after everything? Ethan sank to his knees, his hands gripping his hair. Because I didn't kill her, he said hoarsely. I swear to you, I didn't. She got up. She left. The cameras just don't show it. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. He'll say she left. He always does. Isabella's blood went cold. She looked at Ethan, trembling, pleading, broken. And for the first time since she'd known him, she couldn't tell if he was the man she loved or a man she should fear. Morning came heavy and gray. Ethan was gone when she woke. His phone went straight to voicemail. She checked her inbox. Another email had arrived at dawn. Subject. Do you want to know what really happened? Attached was a location pin. Downtown Toronto. The city she'd run from. The city where everything had fallen apart. A message followed. Come alone. Midnight. Or you'll never find peace. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, torn between reason and the gnawing need for answers. She should have called the police. She should have deleted the messages. But she couldn't. She needed to know the truth. And part of her, the part still tangled in love and betrayal, needed to see Ethan again. Even if it meant walking into the shadows of her own past. The plane landed in Toronto under a veil of mist and morning drizzle. The city skyline a blur of glass and melancholy gray. Isabella hadn't set foot here since she'd left a year ago. Since that night she swore never to return. Now, She was walking straight back into the heart of it. As she stepped out of the airport, memories hit her like cold wind. The long commutes downtown, the glittering gala nights beside Ethan, the endless feeling of being loved and invisible at the same time. Toronto was the city where she'd built her dreams, and where they'd shattered. The message still haunted her. Come alone, midnight, or you'll never find peace. She told no one she was coming, not even Maya. Not after the last video. Not after the image of Ethan pushing Vanessa burned itself into her mind. She didn't know what she would find here, truth, lies, or something in between, but she knew one thing. She couldn't go back to living half in fear, half in longing. By evening, Isabella checked into a quiet boutique hotel near the harbor. She unpacked slowly, staring at the fog curling over the lake, the city lights blinking faintly in the distance. Her heart was restless, her thoughts tangled. Midnight. A pin location in downtown Toronto. An old industrial district long since abandoned. She couldn't help but wonder who had sent it. If not Ethan, then who? At 11:45 p.m., she was there. The location led her to a derelict warehouse on Adelaide Street. The kind of place that had seen too much: broken windows, rusted doors, the faint echo of forgotten work. She hesitated, clutching her phone. This is insane, she muttered. Completely insane. But she pushed open the door anyway. The air inside was cold, thick with dust and old metal. A single light flickered at the far end of the room, and beneath it stood a woman. Isabella froze. It couldn't be. The woman stepped forward, shadows parting around her. Vanessa? Isabella whispered. Alive. Her hair was shorter now, darker. Her eyes, sharp, calculating, carried none of the softness Isabella remembered from the photos. She wore a long black coat, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Except her stomach was flat. Vanessa smiled faintly. You came. Isabella's voice shook. You're alive. Everyone thought that I was dead? Vanessa's smile grew bitter. That was the idea. Isabella's mind spun. Why would you fake your death? Why all of this? The messages, the footage, the threats. Vanessa walked slowly around her, her heels echoing on the concrete. Because, Isabella, I wanted you to see him for who he really is. I wanted you to stop worshiping the man who destroyed us both. Isabella blinked. Destroyed you? You're the one who had his child. Vanessa interrupted, her eyes glinting. No, there was no baby. What? It was a lie, she said calmly. A story I told him to make him feel guilt, to make him remember what he did to me, what he did to you. Vanessa's expression hardened. He took everything. My reputation, my job, my sense of worth. Do you know what it's like to love a man who makes you feel seen, only to realize you were just a distraction from his loneliness? Isabella shook her head. You were the one who came between us. Between you? Vanessa laughed coldly. Sweetheart, there was no you and him anymore. You were the ghost he kept out of guilt. I was the one he turned to when you stopped listening. The words struck like knives. Isabella stepped back, trembling. You're lying. Vanessa's eyes softened suddenly, almost pitying. You still love him. That's why you came. Silence stretched between them, heavy and raw. Tell me the truth, Isabella whispered. The video, the night you disappeared, he pushed you. Yes, Vanessa said simply. And I wanted him to. What? Isabella's voice cracked. Vanessa's expression turned unreadable. I needed him to lose control. I needed him scared. I needed him to feel something after months of treating me like nothing. So yes, I provoked him. I wanted that reaction recorded. You set him up? Vanessa tilted her head. He hurt me first, not with his hands, but with silence, with promises, with lies. You of all people should understand that. Isabella's breath caught. Why drag me into this? Because you were always the ending he wanted, Vanessa said softly. And I was the deeder. I wanted to make sure that if he got you back, it wouldn't be clean. The cold truth of it hit Isabella like a slap. You used me. Vanessa smiled faintly. I used everything, including the camera, including you, including him. Before Isabella could respond, a noise echoed from the far end of the warehouse. Footsteps, deliberate and slow. Ethan's voice filled the air. Enough. Isabella turned, heart in her throat. He stood at the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his expression unreadable. Vanessa's smile didn't waver. Right on time. Isabella, Ethan said, stepping closer, eyes locked on her. Whatever she told you, save it. Vanessa cut in. You had your chance to tell her the truth. The truth? Ethan's voice rose. You faked your own death, Vanessa. You made me think I killed you. That's because you almost did, she said coolly. Or have you forgotten what rage looks like on you? He moved closer, jaw tight. You ruined 3 lives. Vanessa met his gaze, calm, defiant. No, Ethan. I exposed what was already broken. Isabella stood between them, tears spilling over. The man she loved, the woman she pitted, and a truth that cut through both. Stop, she whispered. Just stop, both of you. But neither did. Ethan turned to her, desperate. Bella, I swear I didn't mean to hurt her. That night. Vanessa laughed. He's still lying. Ethan's voice broke. She was blackmailing me. Vanessa's tone turned venomous. You don't get to call it blackmail when it's your guilt that keeps you paying. Isabella pressed her hands to her ears. Enough. The echo of her voice faded into the cold air, and then silence, until a low hum filled the warehouse. The sound of engines. Outside, 2 black SUVs pulled up. Headlights flared through the cracks in the doors. Vanessa's face paled. They found me. Who? Isabella demanded. Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. People I shouldn't have crossed. She grabbed Isabella's arm. You have to go. Now. Ethan stepped forward. What did you do? Vanessa looked at him, sadness flickering behind her eyes. You'll find out soon enough. Then she turned and ran, disappearing into the shadows beyond the warehouse doors as engines roared and voices shouted. Ethan grabbed Isabella's hand. Come on. They ran through the back exit into the rain, hearts pounding, adrenaline burning. Behind them, a scream pierced the night, and then silence again. They didn't stop running until they reached the hotel, soaked, breathless, shaken to their cores. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Isabella stood across from him, drenched and trembling. Tell me, she said softly. What did Vanessa do? Who were those people? Ethan lifted his head, his face pale. She wasn't just after revenge. She stole something from me. From a company. A file. A deal worth billions. Isabella's eyes widened. You're saying this wasn't about love. It was about money. He nodded grimly. And now she's running from people who don't forgive mistakes. She sank into a chair, her mind spinning. So what happens now? Ethan looked at her, his voice raw. Now we try to survive. The rain hadn't stopped since that night at the warehouse. Toronto was soaked in gray, every sound muffled by the endless downpour, every corner heavy with ghosts. Isabella hadn't slept. Neither had Ethan. They sat in silence most of the morning, the air thick with exhaustion and questions neither of them knew how to ask. Finally, she spoke. Tell me everything, Ethan. No more half-truths. No more polished lies. He looked at her, eyes red-rimmed, and nodded. You deserve that much. He poured them both coffee and began. It started 3 years ago, before I ever met you. His global was struggling then. A major deal was on the line, the Carter Project. $1 billion renewable energy contract that could change everything. But we were drowning in debt, cornered by competitors. I was desperate. Isabella leaned forward. And Vanessa? She was working as an analyst for one of our partners. Brilliant, ambitious, and dangerous. He exhaled heavily. She found something. A loophole, a way to shift project funds to save the company temporarily, to keep our stock from collapsing. It wasn't legal, but it bought me time. Her heart sank. You laundered money. He hesitated. Not directly. But yes, she moved numbers around, made it look clean. And when I saw the company survive, I convinced myself it was for the greater good. Until someone found out. Ethan nodded. An internal audit a year later. She came to me, terrified. Said she'd cover for both of us if I protected her. If I made her my permanent consultant. I agreed. That's how it started. Isabella's stomach turned. So your affair wasn't about love at first, he cut in quietly. It was control, mutual leverage. She had my secret. I had her silence. But over time, she got attached. And I looked down. I used that. Used her? Isabella's voice trembled. How? I promised things I didn't mean. I told her I'd leave you, that we could start fresh, clean. But I never meant it. She found out, and that's when everything changed. Isabella stood, pacing the room, her heart pounding. So she faked her death, stole the evidence, and made you look guilty. Yes, he said. And whoever she's running from now, they want that evidence back. Then we go to the police. Ethan laughed bitterly. And tell them what? That I embezzled funds and covered up with the help of my mistress? That the woman everyone thinks I killed is alive and possibly blackmailing me? I'll lose everything, Bella. She stared at him. You already did. That shut him up. The silence that followed wasn't cruel. It was truth. Everything Ethan had built, everything Isabella had believed in, all of it had been built on a foundation of lies. That afternoon, Isabella stepped outside alone. The rain had lightened to a drizzle, and she walked through downtown Toronto, passing the familiar streets that once symbolized ambition and success. Now they felt hollow. She thought about Vanessa's words in the warehouse. You were always the ending you wanted. Had she been? Or just another layer in Ethan's web of redemption and guilt? Her phone buzzed again. A message. No number. No name. Just a video thumbnail. Her fingers trembled as she tapped play. Vanessa again. This time in a car, rain streaking the windows behind her. If you're seeing this, it means they found me. Don't believe everything he tells you, Isabella. Ethan's not the man you think he is. He didn't just lie to you. He built his empire on blood. The screen glitched, then cleared. A flash of a document. A signature. Ethan's. And beneath it, the name of a subsidiary company she'd never heard before. Nordic Green Investments. Her pulse quickened. What is this? Look into that. Vanessa's voice continued. That's where the bodies are buried, figuratively and otherwise. Then static. The video ended. When Isabella returned to the hotel, Ethan was on the phone, pacing. He hung up quickly when she entered. Who was that? She asked. No one, he said too fast. She walked straight to him and held out her phone. Then maybe you can explain this. He froze. His expression darkened as he watched Vanessa's message play. When it ended, he didn't speak. Ethan, she pressed. What's Nordic Green Investments? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling shakily. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. He hesitated, and that hesitation was all the confirmation she needed. You're still lying, she whispered. No, he said quickly, stepping closer. I'm protecting you. From what? The truth. From people who don't care, who they hurt to keep this buried. He snapped. You think this is just about me and Vanessa? It's bigger than both of us. Then tell me what I walked into, Isabella demanded. Tell me what I'm risking just by being here. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. Nordic Green isn't just an investment company. It's a front, a shell we use to hide government contracts. There's corruption, money laundering, bribes. People far above me who would destroy us both to keep it hidden. Us, Isabella repeated bitterly. There's no us anymore. His jaw clenched. There it could be, if we get out of this alive. That night, while Ethan took a call in the other room, Isabella did something she hadn't done in years. She hacked into his laptop. Old habits. Quiet desperation. Within minutes, she found it. A folder labeled NG Archive. Inside, documents, bank records, encrypted messages, and one photo that made her blood run cold. A candid image. Vanessa sitting across from a man in a gray suit at a restaurant. The same man who'd been driving one of the black SUVs outside the warehouse. She zoomed in on the reflection in the window beside them. Ethan, watching from across the street. He knew. He'd known everything. The front door creaked. Ethan entered, wet from the rain, eyes tired. But when he saw her face, when he saw his open laptop, the mask cracked. Bella, he began. She stood, trembling. You followed her. You watched her that night. I was trying to protect her, he said quickly. She was in over her head. Or you were making sure she didn't talk. That's not, he stopped, voice breaking. You don't understand. Those men. They make me understand, she shouted. Because right now all I see is a man who keeps choosing himself over the truth. He stepped closer. You still think I killed her? She looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time she didn't know. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Ethan turned away, shoulders shaking. I made mistakes, he said softly. I lied. I cheated. But I never wanted to hurt you. Tears streamed down her face. Then why does it hurt so much? He looked back at her, his expression hollow. Because love doesn't make us innocent. It just makes us desperate. And before she could reply, his phone buzzed again. A message lit the screen. One line that froze them both. It's done. We found her. The message on Ethan's phone froze the air in the room. It's done. We found her. Isabella's pulse roared in her ears. What does that mean? She whispered. Ethan's eyes widened. It's Vanessa. They found her, or the people chasing her have. He grabbed his coat. I have to go. No, Isabella said sharply. Not alone. Every time you run off on your own, you come back with more secrets. If you're going, I'm coming with you. He hesitated, the storm outside thrashing against the window, then nodded once. Fine. Stay close to me. They drove across the darkened city, headlights cutting through the rain like thin blades of light. Ethan's jaw was tight, his fingers gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. She reached out one last time, he murmured. She wanted to meet, but she didn't say where. The message came from a burner phone. I traced the signal to an old shipping yard near the waterfront. Of course, Isabella muttered. The same place she used to fake her death. As they neared the docks, the city lights faded behind them. What replaced it was silence. Heavy, industrial silence broken only by the creak of metal cranes and the crashing of waves. They parked and stepped out. The wind whipped Isabella's hair as they followed a trail of wet footprints toward a half-open warehouse door. Inside, shadows, and a faint humming sound, like a generator running somewhere deeper in the dark. Ethan raised his flashlight. Vanessa? No reply. They walked deeper in. And then Isabella saw her, lying on the floor near a stack of crates, pale, weak, but alive. A shallow cut traced her temple. Vanessa. Isabella dropped to her knees beside her. Vanessa's eyes fluttered open. You shouldn't have come. Ethan knelt beside her, voice low. Who did this to you? She coughed, wincing. The people behind Nordic Green. They wanted the drive. I told them I didn't have it. Where is it? Isabella asked. Vanessa looked between them, pain flickering behind her eyes. Hidden somewhere only he would look. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? But Vanessa didn't answer. She reached for his hand weakly. I didn't want to destroy you, she said. I just wanted you to admit what you'd done. Her hand slipped away. She was still breathing, but barely. Ethan carried her to the car while Isabella called for help. As they waited for the ambulance, the flashing lights of police cars filled the yard. Someone must have tipped them off. One officer stepped forward, rain dripping from his hat. "Mr. Hayes, we've been trying to reach you. We received a report linking your company to an offshore account connected to Nordic Green. You need to come with us." Ethan looked at Isabella, defeated. "She planted it," he said softly. "Vanessa must have sent everything to them as backup." Isabella's heart broke a little as she watched him being led toward the cruiser. Not because he was innocent, but because she finally saw the man behind all the walls. Guilty, flawed, terrified. Hours later, at the hospital, Vanessa stabilized. When Isabella entered her room, Vanessa turned away, voice brittle. "Is he in jail?" "They're questioning him," Isabella said quietly. "He's not denying anything." Vanessa laughed softly, bitterly. Maybe he finally learned honesty. "Why go this far, Vanessa? You could have exposed him years ago." "I thought I wanted revenge," Vanessa said. "But when I saw what it was doing to me, the fear, the running, I realized I didn't want him destroyed. I wanted him to face what he'd become." She looked at Isabella. "You're the only one who can make him choose differently." The next morning, Isabella went to the station. Ethan sat behind a glass window, tired but calmer now. When she entered the room, he looked up with a faint, broken smile. "I thought you wouldn't come." "I almost didn't," she said. "You've lied to me more than anyone else ever has." He nodded slowly. "I know, but I also saw something last night," she continued. "You didn't run. You could have left her there, but you didn't. That means there's still something left of the man I married." Ethan's voice cracked. "I want to make it right, Bella. Whatever it takes." She leaned forward. "Then start by telling them everything. No lawyers, no more deals. Just the truth." He met her eyes, and for the first time in years, she saw no pretense there. Just exhaustion and remorse. "I will," he said quietly. "For you." Days turned into weeks. Ethan's cooperation with investigators exposed a network of corruption that ran deeper than either of them had imagined. Several high-level executives were arrested. The company was dissolved. The media called it the Nordic Green scandal. But for Isabella, it was something more, the end of an era. She left Toronto for a while, retreating to a quiet coastal town to rebuild herself. She started consulting again, small projects, nothing flashy. One evening, she stood by the water's edge when her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "The case is over. He's free." A moment later, another followed. "He's asking if you'd meet him." She hesitated, the sea wind brushing against her face. Part of her wanted to forget him, to stay safe, far away from a chaos that had nearly destroyed her. But another part, the one that still remembered laughter, quiet mornings, the way he used to look at her, whispered that maybe some stories didn't end in ruins. She typed a single reply. "Tell him I'll come tomorrow." And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Isabella realized she wasn't walking back into the past. She was walking toward the possibility of forgiveness. Toronto in late spring was soft again. The snow had melted. The sky had forgotten its gray, and the wind no longer carried the taste of loss. Isabella stepped out of the taxi, her heels clicking gently on the cobblestones of the old pier. This was where it had all fallen apart, and where it would, perhaps, begin again. Across the water, the reflection of the sun rippled on the waves. And standing there looking older, quieter, and infinitely humbler was Ethan. He turned when he heard her footsteps. For a long moment, neither spoke. It wasn't awkward, it was reverent. The silence between them had carried years of words they were finally ready to face. Ethan was the first to break it. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," Isabella replied softly. "But running from you never stopped the pain. Maybe facing you will." He smiled faintly. "You always were braver than me." She looked at him carefully. The man who had once worn his arrogance like armor now stood stripped of it. There was no sharpness in his eyes anymore, only honesty. "I read about the settlement," she said. "You gave up everything." He nodded. "I had to. Keeping it would have meant living off what destroyed us. I'd rather start again, even if it means from nothing." Isabella tilted her head. "And what will you start with?" He hesitated. Then quietly, "An apology, and I hope you'll hear it." They sat on a bench facing the water, the same one where they'd once taken midnight walks before life had got complicated. "Vanessa?" Isabella asked after a moment. "She's alive," Ethan said. "Testified against the people above us. She's in witness protection now, under a new name. She sent a note through the investigator. Says she hopes we both find peace." Isabella exhaled, some unseen tension finally leaving her chest. "I hope she does too." Ethan nodded. "She wasn't the villain I made her out to be. Maybe none of us were. Just broken people doing desperate things." "Desperation doesn't excuse betrayal," Isabella said. "But I understand it better now." He turned to her. "And can you ever forgive me?" She looked at the water, at the sunlight spilling across it like melted glass. "I don't know if forgiveness is something you decide," she said. "Maybe it just happens when the heart's tired of holding pain." They sat in silence again. A gull cried overhead. The world, for the first time in a long while, felt still. Ethan's voice was low. "When I was in custody, I thought a lot about the first time I saw you. You were presenting a proposal at that hotel conference. You didn't look at me once, and it made me want to know who you were. I remember thinking, there's someone who'll never need saving." Isabella smiled faintly. "You were wrong." "No," he said. "We both needed saving. Just not the way we thought." The sun dipped lower, gold against the skyline. Ethan stood and held out a hand. "Walk with me?" She hesitated only a second before taking it. They walked along the pier, passing the quiet restaurants, the children feeding ducks, the hum of life returning to a city that had survived its storms. Every step felt like a small, unspoken choice to move forward together. As they reached the end of the dock, Ethan stopped. "I'm not asking for another chance right away," he said. "But if one day you find space for me in your life again, I'll be here. No more secrets. No more walls." Isabella looked at him, the man who had broken her heart and, through it, taught her what strength really meant. And she saw not the billionaire, not the sinner, not the scandal. Just the man she had once loved, and somewhere deep inside still did. She reached up, brushing a stray raindrop from his cheek. "Maybe we start small," she said softly. "Coffee. No promises, no apologies. Just two people who survived." Ethan's breath caught, hope flickering in his eyes like dawn breaking. "I can live with that." As they turned back toward the city, the clouds finally broke apart, revealing clear blue sky. For the first time in years, Isabella felt light. The pain didn't vanish. It transformed, softened, became something that no longer owned her. And beside her, Ethan walked quietly, grateful, aware that the road ahead would be long, but for once, honest. Months later, a new cafe opened downtown, modest, sunlit, with books stacked on every table. Its name, Second Draft. Inside, Isabella sat by the window, reviewing a business proposal. Ethan, wearing an apron dusted with coffee grounds, carried 2 cups over and placed one in front of her. She looked up, smiling. "You still make it too strong." He grinned. "You still drink it anyway." Outside, rain began to fall. Not the storm kind, just the soft kind that nourishes what's been broken. The city kept moving. Stories kept unfolding. But for Ethan and Isabella, this chapter had found its ending. Not perfect, but peaceful. And sometimes that was all love ever needed to be.